The morning sun cast long shadows across Camp Pendleton as Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez walked toward the armory, her boots clicking against the concrete with military precision. She had been a Marine for 8 years, working her way up from fresh-faced recruit to one of the most respected marksmanship instructors on the base. But respect, she had learned, was something that had to be earned again and again, especially when you were one of the few women in a predominantly male unit. Maria had always been drawn to shooting. Growing up in a small town in Texas, her father had taught her to hunt when she was just 10 years old. By the time she was 16, she could hit a quarter from 50 yards with his old hunting rifle. When she enlisted in the Marines, she thought her natural talent would be an asset. What she didn't expect was the resistance she would face from some of her male colleagues. The 2nd Battalion had always been a tight-knit group, but Maria quickly realized that being tight-knit sometimes meant being closed off to outsiders. And despite her 8 years of service and numerous commendations, some still saw her as an outsider. The whispers started small, questioning whether she really deserved her instructor position, suggesting that she had been promoted because of diversity initiatives rather than merit. But Maria had thick skin, developed through years of proving herself in a man's world. The real problems began 3 months ago when Gunnery Sergeant Jake Morrison transferred to her unit. Morrison was old-school Marine, the kind who believed that combat roles should be reserved for men only. He had made his feelings known during his first week, though never directly enough to warrant official action. It was the small things, questioning her decisions in front of junior Marines, making subtle comments about women in combat, and creating an atmosphere where others felt emboldened to challenge her authority. Maria noticed the first incident on a Tuesday morning. She had prepared for the weekly marksmanship training session, carefully organizing ammunition for 30 Marines. When she arrived at the range, half of her ammunition was missing. The range master claimed no knowledge of it, and a quick inventory of the armory showed nothing unusual. The missing rounds were chalked up to a clerical error, and Maria had to improvise the training session with reduced live fire exercises. The second incident happened the following week. This time, the ammunition was there, but it had been tampered with. Someone had mixed different grain weights together, making consistent accuracy nearly impossible. During the training exercise, several Marines complained that their rifles were shooting erratically. Maria spent hours after the session sorting through thousands of rounds, separating them by weight and powder charge. The work kept her at the base until nearly midnight. By the 3rd week, the pattern was clear. Someone was deliberately sabotaging her training sessions. The ammunition would either be missing, mixed up, or stored in locations different from where she had placed it the night before. Other instructors began to notice the irregularities, but nobody seemed willing to investigate too deeply. The unspoken message was clear. If she couldn't handle the logistics of her own training sessions, maybe she wasn't cut out for the job. Maria knew she was being tested. In the Marine Corps, there were official channels for handling harassment and sabotage, but using them would brand her as someone who couldn't handle pressure. It would confirm the suspicions of those who believed women didn't belong in combat roles. So instead of filing a complaint, she decided to handle the situation her way. She started by documenting everything. Each morning, she would photograph the ammunition storage, noting quantities, positions, and any irregularities. She installed a small security camera in her office, hidden behind a filing cabinet, that could monitor the armory entrance. Within 2 weeks, she had her answer. The footage showed Morrison and 2 junior Marines entering the armory after hours. They systematically removed ammunition from her allocated storage areas, mixed different types together, and even took some rounds outside to the dumpster. The evidence was clear and damning, but Maria knew that confronting them directly would only escalate the situation. Instead, she began planning something that would solve her problem permanently while demonstrating once, and for all that her expertise was based on merit, not politics. If they wanted to play games with her ammunition supply, she would show them what real marksmanship looked like, even without their standard issue rounds. Maria had always been interested in ballistics and ammunition design. During her off-duty hours, she had been studying reloading techniques and experimenting with different powder charges and bullet configurations. She had even taken a correspondence course in metallurgy, fascinated by how different alloys affected bullet performance. Now, that hobby was about to become her secret weapon. The base had a small workshop facility that Marines could use for personal projects during their free time. Maria signed up for evening shifts, claiming she wanted to work on motorcycle maintenance. Instead, she began setting up a reloading operation. She purchased brass casings, powder, primers, and bullets through civilian suppliers, careful to follow all regulations and obtain proper permissions for having the materials on base. Her plan was ambitious but simple. She would develop her own ammunition loads, specifically designed for maximum accuracy and consistency. During the next major marksmanship competition, when Morrison and his allies inevitably sabotaged her standard ammunition supply, she would switch to her custom loads and demonstrate shooting that was so superior it couldn't be dismissed or explained away. The competition was scheduled for 6 weeks away. It would feature teams from 3 different battalions, with individual and group events. Maria's unit was expected to perform well, but recent training sessions had been inconsistent due to the ammunition problems. This gave Morrison and others more fuel for their arguments that her instruction was inadequate. Working late into the night, Maria began developing her custom loads. She started with standard military specifications, but quickly realized she could improve on them significantly. Military ammunition was designed for reliability across a wide range of conditions and weapons, which meant compromises in optimal performance. By customizing loads for specific rifles and conditions, she could achieve much better accuracy. Her first breakthrough came when she discovered that slightly reducing the powder charge and using a heavier bullet actually improved accuracy at the ranges they would be shooting. The military standard was designed for maximum velocity and penetration, but for target shooting, a more controlled burn and better ballistic coefficient were more important. She tested each load meticulously, firing hundreds of rounds during her personal range time and recording detailed data on velocity, accuracy, and consistency. Gradually, she developed 3 different loads optimized for different distances and conditions. Her 100-yard load could consistently produce groups smaller than an inch, significantly better than standard military ammunition. The physical work was exhausting. After full days of training Marines and handling her regular duties, she would spend 4 to 6 hours in the workshop, carefully measuring powder charges, seating bullets, and checking each completed round for defects. Her hands became permanently stained with gunpowder residue, and she lost 15 pounds from the demanding schedule. But the results spoke for themselves. During her private testing sessions, she was achieving accuracy levels that exceeded anything she had ever accomplished with standard ammunition. More importantly, the ammunition performed consistently, shot after shot, with minimal variation in point of impact. As the competition date approached, Morrison ramped up his sabotage efforts. Entire cases of ammunition would disappear, only to be found days later in completely different locations. Training schedules were mysteriously changed without her knowledge, leaving Marines waiting for instruction that never came. Equipment would malfunction at crucial moments, apparently due to maintenance issues that couldn't be traced to any specific cause. Through it all, Maria maintained her professional demeanor. She adapted to each new challenge, found workarounds for missing equipment, and continued training her Marines to the best of her ability with whatever resources remained available. But privately, she was preparing for the moment when she could reveal the true extent of her capabilities. The night before the competition, Maria made her final preparations. She had manufactured 200 rounds of custom ammunition, each one hand-loaded and individually inspected. The ammunition was stored in her personal locker, away from the sabotage efforts that would undoubtedly target the official supply. She had also prepared detailed documentation of her reloading process, including ballistic data and performance comparisons with standard military rounds. More than just a competition, this was her chance to prove that excellence couldn't be hidden or undermined by petty politics. Tomorrow, she would show everyone exactly what a real Marine marksmanship instructor could accomplish when given the tools to succeed. The ammunition they had hidden would be irrelevant, because she had created something far superior on her own. As she lay in her bunk that night, Maria felt a calm confidence that had been missing for months. The sabotage had pushed her to develop skills she never would have acquired otherwise. In trying to undermine her, Morrison and his allies had actually forced her to become better than she ever thought possible. Tomorrow, that irony would become apparent to everyone watching. The morning of the competition dawned crisp and clear, with barely a breath of wind across the shooting range. Maria arrived 2 hours before the official start time, as was her custom. She believed in being prepared for every contingency, and today was too important to leave anything to chance. The inter-battalion marksmanship competition was held twice yearly, and performance here would determine team selections for regional and national competitions. Representatives from the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd battalions were already setting up their equipment areas when Maria reached the range. She could see Morrison talking animatedly with several Marines from the other units, his gesture suggesting he was sharing some kind of inside information. Maria had a strong suspicion about the topic of their conversation, but she kept her expression neutral and focused on her own preparations. The competition format included both individual events and team challenges. Individual shooters would fire at targets from 100, 200, and 300 yards, with scoring based on accuracy and consistency. The team events involved coordinated fire missions and rapid target engagement scenarios. Maria would be competing in the individual precision shooting category while also serving as the primary marksmanship instructor for her battalion's team. As she organized her gear, Maria noticed Lieutenant Colonel Patterson, the base commander, arriving with a group of visiting officers. Word had spread about this competition, partly due to the ongoing questions about training effectiveness in the 2nd Battalion. Patterson had made it clear that he expected strong performance from all units, and poor showing could result in changes to training programs and personnel assignments. Maria's team members began arriving at their designated area, and she could see the uncertainty in their faces. Over the past months, the ammunition problems had affected their confidence. Even when they performed well during training, the inconsistent results had made them doubt their abilities. Several had privately asked her if there was something wrong with their rifles or their technique, unable to understand why their accuracy varied so dramatically from session to session. Corporal Jennifer Walsh, one of Maria's most promising students, approached with obvious concern. "Staff Sergeant, did you check the ammunition supply this morning? I heard there might be issues again." Jennifer was a naturally gifted shooter who had shown rapid improvement under Maria's instruction, but the recent training problems had shaken her confidence. "Don't worry about the ammunition today," Maria replied with a confidence that surprised even herself. "I've made special arrangements to ensure we have exactly what we need for optimal performance." She didn't elaborate further, but something in her tone seemed to reassure Jennifer and the other Marines who had gathered around. The competition began with the individual precision events. Shooters from each battalion would fire in rotation, with targets scored after each relay. The standard was demanding. To qualify for advanced competition, shooters needed to maintain groupings smaller than 2 inches at 100 yards, 3 inches at 200 yards, and 4 inches at 300 yards. Military ammunition could achieve these standards, but it required exceptional shooting skills and perfect conditions. Morrison volunteered to shoot first for the 2nd Battalion, clearly confident about his chances. He was an undeniably skilled marksman with over 20 years of experience, and his performance would set the standard for the rest of the team. Maria watched as he settled into position, adjusted his rifle, and began his string of fire. His first group at 100 yards measured just over an inch, an excellent result that drew approving comments from the other instructors. At 200 yards, he managed a 2-inch group, again well within the qualification standards. The 300-yard target proved more challenging, with his final group measuring nearly 4 inches, but still within acceptable limits. His total score placed him in solid contention for the individual championship. Other shooters from the various battalions performed with similar competence, producing scores that reflected their extensive training and experience. The standard of shooting was high across all units, making it clear that the competition would be decided by small margins and exceptional performance rather than obvious superiority. When Maria's turn came, she felt the attention of everyone on the range. The visiting officers had heard about the training problems in the 2nd Battalion, and there was obvious curiosity about how the primary marksmanship instructor would perform under pressure. Morrison and his allies were watching particularly intently, clearly expecting her to struggle with whatever ammunition sabotage they had planned. Maria opened her personal equipment case and removed her custom-loaded ammunition. The cartridges looked identical to standard military rounds, but she knew they represented hundreds of hours of careful development and testing. Each round had been individually crafted to maximize accuracy in her specific rifle under these exact conditions. She had also brought her personal rifle, a standard-issue M16A4 that she had carefully maintained and modified within military regulations. The trigger had been professionally adjusted to provide a crisp, consistent pull. The barrel had been hand-lapped for optimal accuracy, and she had installed match-grade sights that allowed for more precise aiming. Every component had been selected and tuned for maximum precision. As she settled into the firing position, Maria felt a familiar calm descending over her. This was the moment she had been preparing for during all those late nights in the workshop. Everything else faded away. The watching officers, Morrison's expectations of her failure, the months of sabotage and undermining. There was only the rifle, the target, and the decades of shooting experience that had brought her to this point. Her first shot at 100 yards struck exactly where she had aimed, dead center in the bullseye. The second shot followed so closely that the spotting team initially called it a possible miss, until they realized the bullet had passed through the same hole as the first. By the 5th shot, the group measured just over half an inch, significantly better than anything else shot that day. The silence around the firing line was telling. Military shooters understood the significance of what they were witnessing. Half-inch groups required not just exceptional shooting skill, but also ammunition and equipment performance that exceeded normal military standards. Several instructors moved closer to observe Maria's technique, trying to understand how she was achieving such remarkable accuracy. The 200-yard stage proved even more impressive. Maria's custom ammunition performed exactly as she had designed it, maintaining consistent velocity and trajectory despite the increased distance. Her final group measured just under 1.5 inches, a result that would be considered excellent for match ammunition at civilian shooting competitions, let alone military training events. But it was the 300-yard stage that truly demonstrated the superiority of her preparation. Long-distance accuracy required ammunition with exceptional consistency and ballistic performance. Military rounds were adequate for combat purposes, but rarely achieved the precision needed for competitive shooting at extended ranges. Maria's hand-loaded cartridges had been specifically developed for this distance, with bullet weights and powder charges optimized for maximum stability and minimal wind drift. Her first shot at 300 yards struck the center of the target with authority. The second shot followed into the same area, and by the time she had completed her string of fire, the group measured just over 2 inches. In competitive shooting terms, this was an extraordinary performance that exceeded the capabilities of standard military ammunition by a significant margin. The final scores reflected the dramatic difference in Maria's performance. Her combined score was nearly 15% higher than Morrison's, despite his decades of experience and previously demonstrated skills. More importantly, her accuracy was so superior to everyone else's that it couldn't be attributed to luck, favorable conditions, or minor equipment advantages. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson was among the first to examine Maria's target, his expression showing genuine surprise at the level of precision she had achieved. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, this is exceptional shooting. What equipment modifications are you using? The question was asked with respect rather than suspicion, reflecting the military's appreciation for technical innovation and superior performance. "No modifications beyond standard military regulations, sir," Maria replied. "I have been experimenting with hand-loaded ammunition during my personal time, developing loads specifically optimized for accuracy rather than general-purpose use." She produced her documentation, showing the careful development process and ballistic testing that had gone into her ammunition. The other instructors crowded around to examine her data, impressed by the scientific approach she had taken. Military marksmanship instructors understood ballistics, but few had the time or inclination to develop custom ammunition loads. The level of detail in her testing and the systematic approach to optimization showed a depth of expertise that commanded professional respect. Morrison's reaction was less enthusiastic. His confidence had been based on the assumption that Maria would be handicapped by ammunition problems, allowing him to demonstrate clear superiority. Instead, he had been outshot so decisively that his own excellent performance appeared mediocre by comparison. The other Marines were already talking about the remarkable shooting they had witnessed, and it was clear that Maria's reputation had been dramatically enhanced. The team events were scheduled for the afternoon, giving everyone time to process what had happened during the individual competition. Maria used the break to inspect the official ammunition supply that had been allocated for her battalion. As expected, someone had mixed different lot numbers together and replaced some rounds with cartridges that had obviously different powder charges. The sabotage was subtle, but would have been devastating to accuracy and consistency. Instead of anger, Maria felt a sense of vindication. The evidence of tampering was clear, but more importantly, it was now irrelevant. She had demonstrated that her expertise and preparation could overcome any attempts at sabotage. The custom ammunition had performed exactly as designed, proving that technical innovation could triumph over petty politics and deliberate undermining. As word spread about her performance, Marines from other battalions began asking technical questions about her reloading process. The interest was professional rather than personal, reflecting the military's culture of sharing knowledge that could improve overall performance. Maria found herself giving impromptu lessons on ballistic optimization and ammunition development, topics she had studied extensively but rarely had the opportunity to discuss. The afternoon would bring the team competitions, where Maria's custom ammunition would face its ultimate test under rapid-fire conditions and time pressure. But already, she knew that the morning's performance had accomplished her primary goal. She had proven beyond any doubt that her marksmanship expertise was real, measurable, and superior to those who had questioned her qualifications. The afternoon team competition would test not just individual marksmanship skills, but also coordination, communication, and performance under pressure. Maria knew that her morning success had changed the dynamics of the entire event. Her Marines, who had been demoralized by months of inconsistent training results, now looked at her with renewed confidence and respect. They had witnessed something extraordinary, and it had reminded them that their instruction was coming from someone with exceptional capabilities. The team event format involved multiple stages that simulated combat scenarios. Teams of 4 shooters would engage targets at various distances while moving between firing positions. Communication and timing were crucial, as each team member had specific targets and time windows for engagement. The scenario was designed to test the kind of coordinated marksmanship that might be required during actual combat operations. Maria selected her team carefully, choosing Marines who had shown the most improvement during training despite the ammunition problems. Corporal Jennifer Walsh would serve as the designated marksman, responsible for longer-distance precision shots. Lance Corporal David Kim had demonstrated excellent rapid-fire accuracy and would handle close-range targets. Private First Class Sarah Martinez showed natural leadership abilities and would coordinate team movements. Corporal Michael Torres had proven himself under pressure and would serve as the backup shooter for any missed targets. As they prepared for the team event, Maria made a decision that surprised her team members. Instead of hoarding her custom ammunition for her own use, she distributed it among all 4 shooters. She had manufactured enough rounds to supply the entire team for the competition, and she wanted to demonstrate that her ammunition development wasn't about personal glory, but about maximizing overall performance. "Staff Sergeant, are you sure about this?" Jennifer asked as she examined the custom cartridges. "This ammunition obviously took a lot of work to develop. Shouldn't you save it for your own shooting?" The question reflected the competitive nature of military training, where individual performance often determined advancement opportunities and recognition. A good instructor's success is measured by her students' performance, not her own achievements, Maria replied. "Today we're going to show everyone what this team is capable of when we have the tools we need to succeed." She spent several minutes explaining the ballistic characteristics of the custom loads, helping each team member understand how to adjust their shooting technique for optimal results. The first stage of the team competition involved engaging multiple targets from a fixed position at 200 yards. Each shooter had 60 seconds to engage 5 targets in a specific sequence, with points awarded for accuracy and speed. The custom ammunition's superior consistency would be crucial here, as rapid target transitions required precise first-shot hits. Maria's team performed with a coordination that impressed even the experienced range officers. Jennifer's opening shots with the custom ammunition achieved first-round hits on all 5 targets, setting a pace that the rest of the team maintained throughout the stage. The superior accuracy of the hand-loaded cartridges meant that follow-up shots were rarely necessary, allowing the team to complete the stage with time to spare and maximum points. Morrison's team, using the sabotaged standard ammunition from the official supply, struggled with consistency issues that became apparent under the pressure of timed fire. Several Marines had to fire multiple shots to achieve hits that should have been routine with proper ammunition. Their completion time was nearly 50% longer than Maria's team, and they accumulated multiple scoring penalties for missed targets. The second stage required shooters to move between 3 different firing positions while engaging targets at ranges from 100 to 300 yards. This tested not just marksmanship skills, but also physical conditioning and the ability to achieve accurate shots while breathing heavily from exertion. The custom ammunition's ballistic superiority would be even more important here, as shooters would have less time to compensate for equipment inconsistencies. Maria had anticipated this challenge during her ammunition development process. She had specifically tested her loads while fatigued, ensuring that they would maintain accuracy even when fired by tired shooters with less than perfect technique. The heavier bullet weights she had selected provided better ballistic stability, making the ammunition more forgiving of minor errors in hold and sight picture. The team's performance on the movement stage was devastating. Each Marine achieved first-round hits on nearly every target, even while transitioning rapidly between positions. The superior accuracy of the custom ammunition allowed them to engage targets with confidence, knowing that proper aim would result in reliable hits. Their total time for the stage was nearly a minute faster than any other team, while maintaining perfect accuracy throughout. Watching from the sidelines, Lieutenant Colonel Patterson made notes that would later become part of official reports about training effectiveness and innovation. The dramatic difference between Maria's team and all others couldn't be attributed to superior training alone. The ammunition factor had become impossible to ignore, especially when combined with the documentation Maria had provided about her development process. The final stage of the competition was designed to be the most challenging. Teams would engage targets in a complex scenario that required precise shooting at multiple distances while dealing with time pressure and simulated combat stress. Range officers used noisemakers and smoke to create distracting conditions, and targets would appear and disappear according to a predetermined sequence that teams couldn't predict. This stage would truly test whether Maria's custom ammunition could maintain its performance advantages under the most demanding conditions. Military ammunition was designed primarily for reliability under adverse circumstances, and there was always a question about whether specialized loads might prove less robust when faced with real-world stresses. Maria's months of testing had prepared her for exactly this concern. She had deliberately tested her ammunition under various temperature conditions, humidity levels, and storage scenarios. She had even subjected some cartridges to vibration and rough handling to ensure they would maintain consistency under field conditions. The loads she had developed were not delicate match rounds suitable only for controlled competitions, but robust cartridges that happened to achieve exceptional accuracy. The team's performance on the final stage exceeded everyone's expectations, including Maria's own hopes. The combination of superior ammunition, excellent training, and renewed confidence produced shooting that was simply in a different category from everything else demonstrated that day. They achieved perfect scores on targets that other teams struggled to hit consistently, and they completed the entire sequence with no missed targets and substantial time remaining. When the final scores were tallied, Maria's team had achieved the highest point total in the recorded history of the inter-battalion competition. Their margin of victory was so large that it couldn't be explained by normal variations in shooter performance or equipment. The custom ammunition had provided a technological advantage that transformed good Marines into exceptional marksmen. The award ceremony that followed was unlike anything Maria had experienced in her military career. Lieutenant Colonel Patterson personally presented the team championship trophy, but more importantly, he announced that Maria's ammunition development work would be formally evaluated for potential adoption as standard practice. The Marine Corps was always interested in innovations that could improve combat effectiveness, and the results spoke for themselves. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, your technical innovation and dedication to excellence reflect the best traditions of the Marine Corps, Patterson stated during the presentation. You have demonstrated that individual initiative and scientific approach to problem solving can produce results that benefit the entire unit. This is exactly the kind of leadership and expertise we want to encourage and recognize. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came when Morrison approached Maria after the ceremony. His usual arrogance had been replaced by grudging respect, and he seemed to struggle with finding the right words. Rodriguez, I have to admit that was impressive shooting today. Maybe I was wrong about some things. It wasn't a complete apology, but it was acknowledgement from someone who had never before shown her any respect. Thank you, Gunny, Maria replied simply. I hope we can work together more effectively going forward. She chose not to mention the ammunition sabotage or the months of undermining behavior. The result had spoken more eloquently than any accusation or confrontation could have accomplished. As the other battalions packed their equipment and departed, Maria's Marines surrounded her with questions about the reloading process and requests for instruction in ammunition development. The interest was genuine and enthusiastic, reflecting their newfound understanding of how technical expertise could enhance combat effectiveness. They had experienced firsthand the difference that superior equipment could make, and they wanted to learn how to achieve similar results. Maria realized that her response to the sabotage had created something more valuable than just personal vindication. She had developed expertise that could benefit the entire Marine Corps, and she had proven that individual initiative and technical innovation could overcome institutional obstacles. The months of late-night work and careful experimentation had produced knowledge that was now being officially recognized and valued. The evening found her back in the workshop, but this time she wasn't working alone. Several Marines had requested permission to learn her reloading techniques, and the base had officially approved the use of workshop facilities for ammunition development training. What had started as a personal response to sabotage was becoming a formal program that could improve marksmanship training across the entire base. As she looked at the group of eager Marines asking technical questions about powder charges and bullet seating depth, Maria felt a satisfaction that had nothing to do with winning competitions or proving doubters wrong. She had found a way to make every Marine under her instruction more effective, and that was ultimately what being an instructor was supposed to accomplish. 3 weeks after the competition, Maria found herself in an unexpected position. Instead of teaching basic marksmanship to reluctant Marines, she was conducting advanced ballistics seminars for officers and senior non-commissioned officers from multiple bases. Word of her ammunition development success had spread throughout the Marine Corps Training Command, and requests for information were arriving daily from units across the country. The transformation had been remarkable. Her small workshop operation had been officially recognized as a pilot program for ammunition optimization research. The Marine Corps had provided additional equipment, including precision measuring tools, chronographs for velocity testing, and access to advanced ballistic analysis software. What had started as a personal project to overcome sabotage was now being studied as a potential revolution in military marksmanship training. Colonel Sarah Henderson from Marine Corps Training Command had flown in from Quantico to personally evaluate the program. Henderson was a logistics specialist with advanced degrees in materials science, and she understood the technical implications of Maria's work better than most. During her visit, she spent hours reviewing the detailed records Maria had maintained throughout her ammunition development process. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the level of documentation you've maintained is exceptional, Henderson noted as she examined months of testing data. This kind of systematic approach to performance optimization is exactly what we need to see more of across the Corps. You've essentially conducted a graduate-level research project while maintaining your regular training responsibilities. The recognition was gratifying, but Maria was more interested in the practical applications of her work. She had identified several areas where standard military ammunition could be improved without compromising reliability or increasing costs significantly. Her research had shown that relatively minor adjustments to powder charges and bullet weights could improve accuracy by 20 to 30% across different rifle platforms. More importantly, she had developed training methods that allowed other Marines to achieve similar results. The key was understanding that ammunition development wasn't just about following recipes, but about understanding the scientific principles underlying ballistic performance. Marines who understood why different components affected accuracy could adapt their techniques to various situations and equipment. The workshop had become a popular destination for Marines during their off-duty hours. Jennifer Walsh had shown particular aptitude for the technical aspects of reloading and was now assisting with instruction. David Kim had discovered a talent for precision measurement and quality control. The group that had started with 4 team members had grown to over 20 Marines who regularly participated in ammunition development activities. But the success had also created new challenges. Morrison and several other traditionalists were uncomfortable with the attention Maria's program was receiving. They argued that Marines should focus on combat skills rather than technical specialization, and that overemphasis on equipment could create dependencies that might prove problematic in combat situations where standard ammunition was the only option available. The criticism wasn't entirely without merit. Military training had to prepare Marines for worst-case scenarios where optimal equipment wouldn't be available. There was a legitimate concern that Marines trained on superior ammunition might struggle to maintain accuracy with standard military rounds. Maria had anticipated this objection and had incorporated it into her training program from the beginning. Her solution was elegant and practical. Marines who learned to reload ammunition also spent significant time shooting with standard military rounds, deliberately inferior equipment, and even damaged ammunition that simulated field conditions. The goal was to develop shooters who could achieve exceptional accuracy with optimal equipment, but who could also maintain basic proficiency under adverse conditions. The point isn't to create Marines who can only shoot with perfect ammunition, Maria explained during a briefing for visiting officers. The point is to develop Marines who understand the relationship between equipment, technique, and results. When they understand how ammunition affects accuracy, they can compensate for equipment limitations and maximize performance regardless of circumstances. The demonstration that followed proved her point convincingly. Marines who had trained with custom ammunition could indeed shoot more accurately with standard rounds than Marines who had only trained with standard ammunition. The understanding of ballistic principles had improved their overall shooting technique, not just their performance with specialized equipment. Colonel Henderson was sufficiently impressed to approve expansion of the pilot program to 3 additional bases. Maria would be responsible for training instructor cadre, who could implement similar programs at their home stations. The project had grown from personal response to sabotage into a Corps-wide initiative that could potentially improve the marksmanship of thousands of Marines. The expanded program required Maria to travel extensively, conducting training seminars and equipment demonstrations at bases across the country. She found herself working with Marines from diverse backgrounds and experience levels, all united by interest in improving their shooting skills. The reception was universally positive, with commanders reporting measurable improvements in qualification scores and overall marksmanship performance. During one particularly memorable visit to Camp Lejeune, Maria worked with a group of female Marines who were preparing for combat deployments. They had been struggling with marksmanship qualifications, not due to lack of skill, but because of equipment issues similar to what Maria had experienced. Standard rifles were configured for average male body proportions, and ammunition was loaded for optimal performance in those same rifles. Working with the group, Maria developed modified loads and equipment configurations that accounted for differences in body size and shooting technique. The results were dramatic. Qualification scores improved by an average of 25%, and several Marines who had been struggling to meet minimum standards achieved expert ratings. The success reinforced Maria's belief that technical innovation could overcome institutional barriers that had been accepted as unchangeable. The program's success had also attracted attention from civilian shooting organizations and ammunition manufacturers. Several companies had approached the Marine Corps about licensing Maria's load development techniques for commercial production. The possibility of improving military ammunition through civilian industry partnerships represented a significant opportunity for broader implementation of her innovations. But perhaps the most satisfying development was the change in attitude among her original unit. Morrison had gradually shifted from opposition to grudging cooperation and then to genuine enthusiasm for the program. His experience and knowledge of traditional marksmanship techniques proved valuable for developing training methods that combined classical shooting fundamentals with modern ballistic science. "You know, Rodriguez, I was wrong about this whole thing," Morrison admitted during one of their planning sessions. "I thought you were trying to replace traditional marksmanship with gadgets and shortcuts, but what you've actually done is make traditional marksmanship more effective by understanding the science behind it." The acknowledgement meant more to Maria than all the official recognition and program expansions. It represented a fundamental change in the culture that had led to the sabotage months earlier. Instead of viewing innovation as a threat to tradition, the unit was beginning to understand that technical advancement could enhance rather than replace fundamental military skills. As the program continued to grow, Maria found herself considering possibilities that would have seemed impossible just a year earlier. The Marine Corps had approached her about pursuing advanced education in ballistics and materials science, with the goal of eventually establishing a formal research and development program for small arms ammunition. The opportunity would involve working with defense contractors and academic institutions to develop next-generation ammunition technologies. The prospect was exciting, but also daunting. It would mean transitioning from hands-on instruction to research and development, from working directly with Marines to developing technologies that might benefit Marines she would never meet. But it also represented the logical extension of the work she had started in response to petty sabotage by colleagues who had underestimated her capabilities. Looking back at the events that had led to this opportunity, Maria recognized that the sabotage had actually been the best thing that could have happened to her career. Without the pressure to overcome ammunition problems, she never would have developed the expertise that was now being recognized throughout the Marine Corps. The attempt to undermine her had forced her to achieve capabilities that exceeded anything she could have accomplished through normal training and experience. The workshop that had started as a secret evening operation was now a bustling training facility with waiting lists for enrollment. Marines from other services were requesting permission to participate, and the program had been featured in military publications as an example of innovative problem-solving and technical leadership. What had been intended as a temporary solution to a personal problem had become a permanent contribution to military marksmanship training. As she prepared for another round of instructor training sessions, Maria reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The months of late-night work, the careful documentation, the systematic testing, all of it had seemed like a massive investment of time and energy for uncertain returns. But the results had exceeded her most optimistic expectations, creating opportunities for impact that extended far beyond her original goals. 2 years later, Master Sergeant Maria Rodriguez stood before a packed auditorium at the Marine Corps University in Quantico, delivering the keynote address at the annual Military Technology Innovation Conference. The audience included generals, defense contractors, academic researchers, and military personnel from allied nations. Her presentation topic was grassroots innovation in military technology, from workshop to Corps-wide implementation. The transformation had been extraordinary. What started as a response to ammunition sabotage had evolved into the Marine Advanced Marksmanship Program, now implemented at 15 bases with plans for Corps-wide adoption. Maria's research had led to 3 patents for ammunition optimization techniques, and she had completed a master's degree in ballistics engineering through the Marine Corps educational program. But the most significant change was cultural. The success of her program had demonstrated that innovation could emerge from unexpected sources, leading to a formal initiative encouraging technical experimentation by enlisted personnel. The Marine Corps had established innovation workshops at major bases, providing equipment and support for Marines who wanted to develop solutions to operational problems. The lesson we learned, Maria told the audience, is that the best innovations often come from the people who face problems daily in their operational environment. When we give Marines the tools and support to develop solutions, they consistently exceed our expectations for creativity and effectiveness. The program statistics were impressive. Marines trained with optimized ammunition showed 30% improvement in marksmanship qualification scores. More importantly, the training had reduced the time required to achieve expert-level proficiency by nearly 40%. Combat units reported increased confidence in long-range engagements and improved first-shot hit probability during training exercises. The success had attracted international attention. NATO allies had sent observers to study the program, and several countries had implemented similar initiatives based on Maria's techniques. The Australian Defence Force had achieved particularly impressive results, adapting the ammunition optimization methods to their different rifle systems and environmental conditions. During the question period following her presentation, a young Marine corporal raised her hand. "Master Sergeant, what advice would you give to someone who has an idea for improvement but faces resistance from leadership?" The question brought back memories of those frustrating months when her expertise had been questioned and her efforts undermined. "First, document everything," Maria replied. "Good ideas need good evidence to support them. Second, focus on results rather than personalities. When you can demonstrate measurable improvement, opposition tends to fade away. And finally, remember that persistence and professionalism will ultimately overcome politics and prejudice." After the conference, Maria returned to her new assignment at the Marine Corps Systems Command, where she led a team of engineers and technicians developing next-generation small arms ammunition. The work involved collaboration with major defense contractors, but the core principles remained the same as those she had developed in her evening workshop sessions: systematic testing, careful documentation, and focus on measurable performance improvement. Her team had recently achieved a breakthrough in developing temperature-stable propellants that maintained consistent performance across extreme environmental conditions. The technology would be particularly valuable for Marines deployed in desert and Arctic environments, where standard ammunition showed significant performance variations due to temperature effects. But Maria's proudest accomplishment was the network of innovation workshops that had grown from her original program. Over 200 Marines had completed advanced training in ammunition development, and many had gone on to develop their own improvements to military equipment and procedures. The culture of technical innovation was becoming embedded in Marine Corps training and operations. Jennifer Walsh, now a staff sergeant herself, had taken over management of the original workshop at Camp Pendleton. Under her leadership, the program had expanded beyond ammunition development to include rifle modifications, optics optimization, and even development of specialized training equipment. Her latest project involved creating virtual reality training systems that could simulate marksmanship challenges without requiring live ammunition. David Kim had discovered a talent for precision manufacturing and had developed several improvements to rifle manufacturing processes that were now being used by military contractors. His innovations had reduced production costs while improving accuracy standards for newly manufactured weapons. The Marine Corps had supported his enrollment in an advanced manufacturing engineering program, and he was expected to return as a technical specialist in weapons production. Morrison, now a sergeant major, had become one of the program's most effective advocates. His conversion from skeptic to supporter had been genuine and complete, and his traditional marksmanship expertise proved invaluable for developing training methods that combine classical techniques with modern technology. He often joked that Maria had taught him more about shooting in 2 years than he had learned in the previous 20. The thing about Rodriguez, he told visitors to the program, is that she never tried to replace what worked. She just made it work better. That's the difference between innovation and novelty. Real innovation builds on solid foundations instead of throwing them away. The success had also brought unexpected opportunities. Maria had been approached about civilian career opportunities with major ammunition manufacturers and defense contractors. The salaries offered were substantially higher than military pay, and the work would involve cutting-edge research with unlimited budgets and state-of-the-art facilities. But she had chosen to remain in the Marine Corps, at least for the immediate future. The military environment provided unique opportunities to see innovations implemented at scale and to work directly with the people who would benefit from improvements. Civilian research might be more lucrative, but military service offered the satisfaction of direct impact on operational effectiveness and marine safety. Her current project involved developing smart ammunition that could adjust its ballistic characteristics based on environmental conditions. The technology was still in early stages, but preliminary tests suggested that it might be possible to create cartridges that automatically compensated for temperature, humidity, and altitude variations. Such ammunition could dramatically improve marksmanship performance for Marines operating in diverse environments. The work required collaboration with computer scientists, materials engineers, and electronics specialists, a team that would have been unimaginable during her days as a basic marksmanship instructor. But the fundamental approach remained unchanged. Identify problems that affected operational performance, develop solutions through systematic experimentation, and test everything thoroughly before implementation. Looking back at the events that had started her journey, Maria often reflected on the irony of her situation. The colleagues who had tried to sabotage her career had actually created the circumstances that led to her greatest professional success. Their attempts to undermine her had forced her to develop capabilities that exceeded anything she could have achieved through normal career progression. More importantly, the experience had taught her that excellence was the best response to prejudice, and that technical competence could overcome institutional barriers that might seem insurmountable. The months of late-night work and careful experimentation had been difficult, but they had also been transformative in ways that extended far beyond ammunition development. The program's success had also influenced her approach to leadership and mentorship. She made a point of encouraging innovation among junior Marines, providing support and resources for their projects, and ensuring that good ideas receive serious consideration regardless of the rank or background of their originators. Her office maintained an open-door policy for Marines with technical ideas, and she had helped launch several successful projects that had been developed by enlisted personnel. As she prepared for her next assignment, a position with NATO's Research and Development Command that would involve working with Allied forces to develop international standards for advanced ammunition technologies, Maria reflected on the unexpected path that had brought her to this point. What had started as a personal response to workplace sabotage had evolved into a career devoted to improving the effectiveness and safety of military personnel worldwide. The workshop where she had spent those countless evening hours developing custom ammunition had been preserved as part of the Marine Corps Innovation Program. New Marines training in ammunition development could see the original equipment she had used and learn about the systematic approach that had led to such remarkable results. It served as a reminder that significant innovations could emerge from simple tools and individual determination when combined with scientific methodology and persistent effort. The story had become part of Marine Corps lore, told to new recruits as an example of how individual excellence and technical innovation could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. But for Maria, the real satisfaction came from knowing that thousands of Marines were now better marksmen because of work that had started as a response to petty sabotage by colleagues who had underestimated her capabilities. The ammunition they had hidden was long forgotten, but the innovations it had inspired would continue benefiting Marines for decades to come. In the end, that was the most satisfying response to those who had doubted her expertise, not proving them wrong, but making their doubts irrelevant through contributions that exceeded anything they could have imagined.